get the UN and all these countries to pay for an occupation, right? So the US's new thing, and I've written about this, it's called the Global Fragilities Act, right? In that Empire article. The whole thing is to basically use others to carry on US foreign policy objectives.
Yeah.
And so the first country that the US asked to actually lead this new military invasion was Canada. Canada said no. Then they asked Brazil. Brazil said no. Then they asked Mexico. Mexico said no. Then they asked the Caribbean countries and they said no. So then they were scrambling because, none of Brazil said it was politically unpopular because a lot of Brazilians were against occupying Haiti. So there's no way that Lula could get away with that, or any of Brazilian government could get away with that. Mexico thought it was not, they didn't want to get involved. And so, but Kenya is interesting because Kenya had never had bilateral relations with Haiti, right? It's only recently that they saw bilateral relations because of the US. And people are saying part of it is Kenya is broke. They're waiting for an IMF loan. The US said it would expedite the IMF loan. And then I don't know if you remember Austin, Secretary Austin, Lloyd
Austin,
Austin, that's what we call him, went there to sign security agreements to help Kenya with Al-Shabaab. And so part of it, like Kenya was willing because Kenya was willing to sell its services and said, oh, we can send police and we'll do it. But they're also being they're pushed and bribed, right? Because they say they'll do it for the $200 million. But let me just say one more thing. This is not a UN mission. So all these news media that are presenting this as a UN mission, because if it was a UN mission, you would not need to force Kenya to do it. The UN peacekeeping mission means everybody has a responsibility to send soldiers. Some members of Security Council said this seems like too brutal a mission for the UN to be called peacekeeping. You need a different force. So the US went through the veneer of legality by getting the Security Council to agree to say, okay, to sanction it. But it wasn't a unanimous vote. It was 3-4, 2 abstentions, right?
When was that?
This was October 2nd, 2023.
So Russia and China both abstained? They didn't vote against the US?
Russia and China, and so to this day, we're trying to figure. So they've been voting against it all along because they're saying this mission that you want to do, this non-UN mission, doesn't seem legal. It's not under any mandate. It's going to open up the space for violence, more violence than is necessary. And then China in particular said, well, the situation in Haiti doesn't need a military occupation. What you need is an arms embargo, close the borders, right? Which the U.S. refuses to do because the other thing is
they want to get in arms, to their guys.
But the so-called gangs, first of all, everybody's like, gangs have taken over Haiti. I really want to address this, the narrative of the media, because the majority of the so-called gangs, these armed groups, the paramilitaries, because a lot of them are former army and soldiers, they're not gangs, right? It's only in Port-au-Prince, right? And people say they've taken over 80% of Port-au-Prince because everybody uses the same line. But if you look at the map of Port-au-Prince, they're in the popular neighborhoods, the poor areas that are very densely packed. They're only in about 4 or 5 of them. If people have shown videos going through, and I've seen enough images that I've seen pictures from the earthquake being used to represent today. So I saw a row of houses broken down. I said, oh my God, these are images from the earthquake. Why are they making it seem like things are, I'm not saying things are not bad. I do think it's the oligarch. So I wanted to get back to that because the people arming these groups are the rich, are the people who own the private ports. So for example, Gilbert Bigot, which is Haiti's billionaire, owns a port called Port Latifo, if I have that name correctly, where most, they're privately owned. So nobody checks what comes in, right? In fact, Gilbert Bigot, along with 4 other oligarchs, were also sanctioned by the Canadian government for arming groups. And I think what's happened is in the past, all these governments used to arm groups. So Michel Martelly, when people were protesting, because there are always a lot of protests against these installations, right? Haitians have been protesting. Like in 2018, 2019, you had the largest protest ever against Michel Martelly and Jovenel Moïse. there are millions of people in the street that never made it to the news, right? Or people are protesting the fact that Ariel Henry removed fuel subsidies, the only subsidies Haitians had, and overnight prices went up by 40%. Inflation went up by 40%.
Holy.
Right. This is last summer, right? So people are in the street protesting, and Ariel Henry would say, "Oh, these are just gangs," and then they would hire armed people to shoot into the crowds. That's what they were doing, and I think what's happened is over time, as people Haitians were pushing back, no intervention, no intervention, they keep dumping arms, ammunition into the country, and so now it's become a bigger problem than it should have been. But the U.S. was trying to keep Henry in power when the people did not want him, and so now I think the U.S. is scrambling because things have turned in a way I don't think they expected. They thought the Kenya thing was going to go fast and that they would send the Kenyan police and basically protect Ariel Henry, right? That's what they want. They want to keep him in power because he's a pliable stooge, right? But they did not expect the Kenyan, and I think a lot of us have a lot to do with it because we started reaching out to our Kenyan colleagues and, doing protests and writing letters to the Kenyan government. And until this Kenyan lawyer decided to challenge this, right? And so I don't think they expected the Kenyan courts to stop this. So the Kenyan courts stopped it in January. So then the Kenyan court said, well, you have to show bilateral agreement, which is why they rushed Henry out there because they were rushing to bring this force. But then they underestimated that these groups would come together and keep him out. So now we don't know what's going on there because all these armed groups that used to fight against one another, they're all together. There's also a video of this one of these young guys who used to work, and he pointed out to one of the elites, one of the oligarchs. His name is Andre Apade. He's basically said, "You made me do this in 2003. You made me you made me go to your factory and do this to attack Aristide's convoy. You made me do this. We haven't forgotten." So now I think they realize that they've been used by the elites and the oligarchs and the governments to attack each other, and they're saying we're not going to do that again, right? So there's that. But the other thing is it's going to be difficult because they're so small. That's what I'm saying. Like, the rest of Haiti, there are 12 million people in Haiti. So most of this has been in Port-au-Prince. I mean, it blocks the rest of the country because they block the main roads that take you out of the south into the north to other parts of the country and come down, right? And people have left. But these are like crowded neighborhoods, right? With thousands of people in them. So if they start shooting, people are going to get caught in the crossfire. But I do think it's going to take a lot because a lot of people in these poor neighborhoods suffered from their fighting with one another. And it might be hard for them to forgive, a lot of these young guys who would shoot into the neighborhood and so on. So it's a really crazy developing story. It shows to me the waning power of U.S. of the U.S. empire, right? Because the U.S. has been trying to get this military occupation in Haiti for more than 3 years. In the past, it would have just sent 3,000 soldiers and done it. But now it doesn't even have enough soldiers. It's spread so thin. Like it can't do that. And so we'll see what happens.
Seems that the tides are turning because although this is still my question, why China and Russia did not intervene, but maybe, you pick some fights and others you let go because not enough to win.
I think
there.
so, because they held it up. That's what they held it up for 3 years. They kept saying no, they kept voting no, and then finally, I think something must have happened. They agreed to just say, okay, we're not going to touch this.
Yeah, but I just want to point out, because again, this is a foreign policy article, and anyone watching this channel,
that article was so racist and so condescending to me because they don't have any context, right? It's just basically send military and go kill the Haitians. And I'm like, the only thing the U.S. has ever built for Haiti, besides the fact that Haiti has the 4th largest embassy in the world, the U.S. embassy in the world, people don't realize this, right? And then 3 prisons. That's the only thing the U.S. has left us, 3 prisons, right? Because that's all we're worthy of, violence and incarceration. That's the problem.
It's just when you read things like this, it is undeniable that Haiti is a failed state. That means there is no Haitian-led solution to the country's turmoil forthcoming.
There have been Haitian solutions. The Haitians were putting together solutions. There were the Famille Lavalas had its own Salut Public solution. There are groups of paysans and artists putting together their solution. And then one of the larger groups of the Montana group that actually managed at the very beginning to bring people from the rural areas, the students, the businesses, although I don't think business community should be part of this decision, but that's, but the religious leaders. And they came up with this is in 2021, they came up with a 2-year transition plan to, to have a transition council and then to have elections. The US ignored it completely, said didn't want to have anything to do with it because a 2-year solution, 2-year transition was too long. And then Ariel only ends up staying 3 years, right? And so for people to say Haitians don't have solutions, they, they're reading the mainstream media, and they believe the racism is like Black people can't ruin themselves, or no one in the global South can ruin themselves. And they don't know the context. I mean, that foreign policy article is so terrible because they don't provide any context. They say Henry became prime minister. How does he become prime minister? So it's not
appointed.
Right. So this is, Moise is killed, Henry becomes minister. So then does that mean any one of us could have just gone to Haiti and said, well, I'm prime minister now? Right? I mean, so if you read these articles, you're like, this doesn't make any sense. How does he become prime minister? And it completely leaves out, and for me, it leaves out the real gangsters in the story. The real gangsters in the story are the US, France, and Canada, the core group, the people who can get away with so much death and misery, so much destruction, and still walk around in suits as if they're real statesmen. Yes, people will see, Cherizier and these young men in their ragged out outfits, holding their guns, pretending they're big. But the people who are really causing misery and pain in the world, they don't get any of that. And that to me is the most sad part of it all.
Like, where do you see it?
Haiti is under occupation. In fact, what makes it more insidious is that the world doesn't think it's under occupation. So in 1915, people could say, oh, the US occupies Haiti. But now when you have the UN, the core group, making decisions for, deciding who's the president, who's the prime minister, it's an occupation. That's why I'm saying, like, the establishment of the UN force is really what consolidated occupation, but hid the occupation under a language of multilateralism. There's a great article on Haiti called Multilateralism as Terror, US Imperialism and Haiti. And I think if we read that, you'll see what it means. It's just, you think multilateralism means great, we're working together, but for Haiti, it has meant the whole world has come together and helped the US occupy it.
And core group in this sense is not in the Haitian constitution.
No,
it's not part.
The core group was made up with the UN occupation, and it should have been dissolved when the main peacekeeping mission left in 2017. It's like the US, France, Canada, Brazil, Spain, Germany. These are the core group members. It's crazy to me. They don't have any mandate whatsoever, but they make decisions.